So there we go. That means we've officially started. Again, if you can put your questions in the Q&A button. And now we have a lot to go over, so I am going to just introduce our panelists today, and then I'll just disappear. We have with us today Daniela Norden with Element 451. Welcome, Daniela.
Thank you.
Daniela is the Vice President of Platform Enablement, and she champions the use of AI to reimagine how colleges and universities engage with students. She's guided more than 300 institutions in adopting AI-powered strategies that accelerate time to value and transform student engagement. And at Element 451, she and her team streamline onboarding, deliver seamless integrations, and provide strategic guidance backed by exceptional customer support. And I do have to read this part of her bio. It says her superpower: empowering campus leaders to harness AI for smarter engagement, stronger retention, and sustainable growth. That's a great superpower, Daniela. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Right. And we are also joined by Dr. Courtney Skiles. She is the Director of Enrollment Services at Trinity Valley Community College, where she leads recruiting, admissions, and academic advising departments across multiple campuses. She has a doctorate in higher education leadership from Maryville University, and she is recognized for driving enrollment growth, advancing caseload advising, and implementing innovative CRM solutions like Element 451 to transform the student experience. A passionate advocate for access, equity, and rural student success, Dr. Skiles has also served in state-level leadership roles with the Texas Junior College Student Government Association, and her work focuses on student-centered innovation, data-informed decision-making, and creating pathways that foster long-term student engagement and achievement. Welcome, Dr. Skiles.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here today.
Well, we're very grateful that you're here. And I am going to mute myself and disappear and let you get to it.
Thanks, Tabitha, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We are thrilled to help share TVCC's story. Like Tabitha mentioned, we're going to talk about application to enrollment. We're going to talk about ways that we can close this yield gap. We know that this is a timely topic. We know that every summer, thousands of admitted students never make it to day one onto your campuses or into your classrooms. So community colleges in particular are face unique challenges around summer melt. So we know that you've got limited staff capacity. We know that you have those resource constraints. And that's really the frame and the lens that we're going to look through how AI can help you. Tabitha did such a great job introing us, Courtney. I don't know that we need to add anything more onto this, but I will say that for as impressive as that bio was, Courtney really does, your passion for your students and access to education really comes through. So I'll just echo that piece of it and say that I see my role as Element as a privilege to getting to work with partners like Courtney and TVCC to find out how to reduce those access barriers and how Element can help in any way that we can. So I am honored to be here on this panel with you, my friend.
Thank you, Daniela.
Of course, but let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to explore how AI-powered tools, but really human ingenuity too, are working together to close the gap, not just to increase yield, but to build those more equitable, those more accessible pathways for your students. So Courtney is going to talk about how her small but mighty team used AI to transform their student engagement. But I want to start by talking about the broader landscape, what's changing, why AI matters now. We often hear that AI is coming for our jobs. If there's a hand raised tool or in your Q&A, I know how many of you have heard that in the last few months. But the truth is that in higher ed, AI is actually coming for our busy work. So we see the real opportunity to free up people on campuses to focus on the human moments that really make a difference for your students. At Element, we see that that automation isn't about replacing staff, but it's about creating more availability, more empathy. And when you think about this, really imagine a world where AI is handling those routine check-ins. It's freeing up advisors to have deeper conversations with students. It's allowing them to dig deeper into what their goals are when they're on campus or what they're coming to college for, or those barriers and how your campuses and your team can help reduce those barriers. So that's the story that we're going to explore today, how one community college, how TVCC was able to take that idea and turn it into action. I know that I don't have to, I'm preaching to the choir here when we're talking about the problem of summer melt, but I really do want to focus on why this matters. So, across higher ed, summer melt remains one of the most stubborn leaks in our pipeline. So, for community colleges in particular, this is especially brutal. This study from Inside Higher Ed last year showed that anywhere from 10% to as high as 37% of community college intending students never make it to day one. Y'all, that's a third of your students who have raised their hand, who have applied. Maybe they even made it as far as registering, but they have just disappeared before classes even starts. And so to put that in perspective, like 37%, like, a third, that's 100 to 370 individual students that you have reached, that you put your resources in, that you supported, that you accepted, that you put your money, your time, your investment into, that never show up to campus. So I think that, it always kind of helps to walk through this, but what does this look like from a student perspective? Let's say a student gets accepted, they applied early, they completed orientation, they even talked to advisors about what their class plan looks like, but over the summer, maybe they couldn't get a hold of anybody about financial aid to confirm their financial aid package. Their emails bounce around between offices. By August, they've given up. They started working full time and they've moved on, right? And that is a very similar, like, that is a textbook story for every student across campus. And what this says to us is that this isn't just an enrollment issue, it's actually an access and a workforce issue. So every student who melts away represents that lost potential in our classrooms. And Courtney's going to talk a little bit about Texas's model, but lost potential in our communities when it comes to outcomes and that workforce. So when you're thinking about this, how many students did your institution lose in this way just last term? Not the ones who ever applied, but the ones who said yes and they still didn't make it. If you know that summer melt number, that's what we're really trying to figure out. And that's the challenge that we're tackling today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Courtney, who can tell us a little bit about her story and start with just talking about TVCC and maybe why we were talking about your cheer team earlier in this webinar.
Absolutely. So, hi everyone. Like I was introduced, my name is Courtney Skiles, and I serve as the Director of Enrollment Services at Trinity Valley Community College, where I oversee recruiting initiatives, admissions, as well as academic advising across 5 rural campuses in East Texas. But before we dive into the data and the AI and the logistical pieces, which I know are important, I really want to step back and share some stories because I believe that the most important part of our jobs in higher education, but specifically for me in community colleges, and I see so many of you in the chat are from technical or community colleges across the US, we deal with a very specific population of students. And I was one of those students. And so this journey for me as both a student and a professional in higher education, the last nearly 8 years of my life, has been so important and deeply personal to me and has really driven my mission and my team's mission in enrollment services and what we do for our students. So I'm going to start a little bit about me, and then I'll transition into TVCC and kind of where we've been the last couple of years, what we've struggled with, and where we're at now and where we're going. But I started as a child of a military family. I see some people who say they lived in Western PA. My dad lives in Waynesburg, very southwestern PA. I've lived in California. I was born in California on a Navy base. So I kind of moved around. My family was very, very much involved in the military my whole life. So a lot of people didn't go to college. And actually the closest relative that I had for most of my life who went to a college, community college, university, anything, was an uncle. So I really didn't have a lot of people up close and personal in my life to model what it meant to go to college, what it took to get there. We all just kind of got jobs in whatever industry felt right. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I grew up, ended up a child of divorced parents, kind of bounced around a lot, in and out of custody of different family members. And by the time I got to high school, like so many of our students experience, I really didn't know what I was doing or where to go or how to get to college. I really hadn't considered going to university because I knew my family didn't have the money. I didn't know how to get to college. I knew it was going to be expensive and I probably needed to have good grades. And all of my peers were involved in all these extracurricular activities or had been in sports. They had been building this resume during their high school career to get them to a university. And I hadn't done any of that. So I sat in a classroom my junior year of high school, and one of our high school staff members came in and started asking us questions about college. And everyone either said this big university, this big out of state school, or there were some people who would say, oh, I'm going to community college. And I would hear my friends talk. I would hear what they would say about the people going to community colleges, and they would say they're not as good as going to university. They're not as valuable. The degrees don't mean as much. If you go there, you're stupid. You're not as smart. And I really started to take on those things that my peers were saying about community college, and I felt ashamed that I was probably going to be one of the students who went to a community college. But I also didn't want to miss out on the opportunities that my peers were going to have going to big institutions. They were excited about dorm rooms and roommates and going to games or joining sororities and fraternities and being able to go and do all of the traditional college things that you see. And I still wanted to have that experience like my peers did, but I was not academically, financially, or socially ready to go to college. However, I was deeply committed to my mission. I was bound determined I was going to make it work. And so I started looking up affordable colleges in Texas. And I specifically wanted dorms. I wanted to have a student life. I wanted to move away and get out of my mom's house and be my own person. And I found TVCC one late night Google search. And I realized that they gave really great scholarships and that they weren't too far away, but they were far enough away that my mom couldn't find me very quickly and easily. And they offered seemingly all the things that I wanted in a college. And so I took a chance. This was during my junior year of high school. So I spent my senior year learning just enough dance ability to audition for TVCC's dance team, and I ended up being offered a scholarship after some begging and pleading from some other mentors in my life to the dance director at the time. And I got a scholarship that completely changed my life. And because I had spent so much of my life not knowing even where I was going to go to college, I definitely hadn't considered what I wanted to do for a career. But I knew this opportunity at TVCC was my one and only shot to make a difference in my life, to be able to get a job that was going to pay me well enough to one day be able to support my family and change a lot of the experiences that I personally had had as a child and as a teenager. So I got to TVCC in the fall of 2016, and I immediately got to work trying to meet everyone that I possibly could, who could maybe mentor me or give me advice. I joined Student Government Association. I joined all sorts of different clubs just because I knew dancing was not going to be my career because I barely could do it to get to college. But I was committed to advancing. I wanted to go to university. I wanted to probably get a master's degree, but I didn't even know in what or what that looked like. So as a student at TVCC, now being involved, I was working with these staff members and faculty members in this very close knit community that cared deeply about me. They knew me personally, they knew my struggles, they encouraged me, they saw me and they saw things in me and believed in me and empowered me in ways that I had never once experienced in my entire life. And I came as a student who was incredibly middle of the pack academically. I graduated probably 450 out of 900 students at my high school. And I came in and I was making straight A's. I became president of our student government association. I was able to be a state student government officer for the state of Texas. I had networked and I felt so supported and loved and valued and special at my community college by the people who worked there that I decided I wanted to be them. And that is where my journey started. And the idea was planted in me that I wanted to come back and work at a community college because I wanted to be one of those people who took this girl who didn't know anything, didn't believe in herself, didn't see a path forward, and gave her all the tools and resources to be something and someone. And I graduated. I walked across the stage. I stopped at one of our vice presidents as he was shaking my hand at graduation, and he said, "You've done such great things, Courtney. I really hope we see you again." And I, shaking his hand on that graduation stage, said, "I'm not leaving until you give me a job, sir." And I walked off the stage, and less than a year later after graduating, I was at a university here in Texas, and I got a call from someone at TVCC, one of my former mentors, and he said, "We have an opening as a recruiter. We would really love for you to come back and work for TVCC." And I said, "Absolutely, that is my dream job. Please, I will do anything." And I interviewed and started working at TVCC in 2019, October of 2019. So I think almost exactly 6 years ago. And that is really what sparked my journey. I didn't come from a rural town, but I found myself in love with this rural community and in love with what community colleges do for students and the resources, the support, the just the environment that we have the power to create for those people that we serve, whether they be a traditional 18-year-old student or whether they're an adult coming back. Maybe they're a single parent with two or more kids. Maybe they've lost their job and they need to reskill. They need to go into the workforce as quick as possible. They want to get a bachelor's degree. They want to go into be a doctor, whatever they want to do, no matter who they are, where they are coming from. Community colleges are uniquely positioned to be a launching pad for those populations. And, you know, so many of our struggles that we face that I came to learn through my job as a professional at a community college was you want to do the most you possibly can because your heart is in the right place. But we only have so many resources. We only have so many hours in the day, and our students have so many struggles that are so unique to them and their specific instances that it's nearly impossible for us to reach everyone the way that they want to. So, where were we in 2019 when I came in? Obviously, we know a couple months later, global pandemic hit. And as a recruiter during a global pandemic, let me tell you guys, oh my gosh, what a challenge. As specifically when you're in these rural communities where you already kind of struggle with outreach. I mean, we have so many students in our area who don't have reliable transportation. They don't have access to internet at home because we are in dead zones where they're, up, especially back then, satellite and Starlink and all of those other more accessible internet options weren't super widely available where I live. And so we found ourselves closed down to the public. We didn't have really a way to reach out to students outside of just very archaic emails. We had just finished implementing our SIS colleague, Aleutian colleague in 2019. Before that, we had been on a homegrown system that looked like you could play Pong on it. So we were really kind of institution-wide technology natives or technology infants, and we're very new in that journey. So we were not equipped to close our doors to our community, to have our community close their doors on us. And we kind of scrambled for a minute, if I'm honest. Like most of you probably experienced, we nosedived enrollment. And before that, even before the global pandemic, we were already just, I think at that point we were 8% down from our previous highest enrollment over the period of a couple of years. So we had already been in this transitionary period of time in TVCC where we were trying to figure out ways to increase enrollment. We had a brand new recruiting department when I started in 2019, from the director down to the recruiters ourselves. We all started at the exact same time. And then the pandemic hits, and we hadn't even had time to get a strategic recruiting plan put together. We didn't know what it looked like to be at classrooms really at all. So we found ourselves struggling and at a loss. And that started our journey to find Element 451. We were looking for solutions primarily just to be able to text students, because we know, especially at that point, students are mostly in their phones, that traditional age. We needed to meet them where they were, and we kind of had proposed to get a CRM. It didn't work out the first time. We were kind of in the heat of 2020, and that kind of in between solution that we found just really wasn't working for us for what we wanted. We wanted to be able to outreach and support students, and just simply sending a text or sending an email was not the right way to perform that outreach. And I saw as a student who came here that these people who worked at TVCC deeply cared. And that was our hallmark, that was a part of our brand. Was we were personable, we were there, we were present. You could walk into any one of our campuses and we would take care of you. And that ability was stripped away from us. So we very quickly were trying to revamp and revitalize and just completely change how we had approached. I think we were in a place where we had been very reactive to students rather than proactive, and we needed to quickly shift gears. So in 2021, you probably read on the last slide, we were still processing paper applications, and we found ourselves in a completely digital landscape. So we took that to our board of trustees. We were able to get approved to be able to purchase Element 451. And even at the time when we became a partner with Element was still very new in their journey as well. And that was kind of why we connected with the company and with the product so much, was because we were new at this, they were new at this, and we knew that we were going to be able to partner together and grow over the next couple of years. So the pain points where we found ourselves in the beginning of our journey, we had a lot of leadership turnover. Like I said, our recruiting department was brand new. We had also had a lot of vice presidents retire, transfer to some other institutions for different opportunities. We also, very shortly after the pandemic, we ended up with a new president because our previous president retired. So we just found ourselves in this new administrative era, new vision, new goals. We had been wiped almost completely clean from COVID. And so we were a blank slate looking to start fresh. We were not tech ready. We did not have a team that was ready to implement another huge piece of technology right off the bat of just having implemented a SIS for the first time ever. And then we also had some implementation setbacks with Element. That is a part of our journey with the Element 451 team that I am not ashamed to talk about. It did not go great. It actually kind of fell apart there for a minute. And it was during that implementation in 2021 where we were really starting to kind of get our feet under us and trying to figure out, okay, let's have these really innovative campaigns and let's redo our application process. That the director of recruiting who was leading our implementation left. And I was I was given the opportunity to step up into that role and kind of take the reins. And that is really where the vision shifted from just let's get a new application, let's text students, let's email, to let's completely revolutionize the way that students interact with us. Let's change the experience. Let's set the tone from the jump and see where this takes us. And that required a lot of persistence, a lot of reiterating what our mission was, which is student first. What we do as a community college is personal. It is important. It is deeply individualistic. And I wanted to keep that at the center of everything we did, whether there was technology in the mix or not. And also, I only had five people, including myself and my whole team, to pull this off to implement this whole new piece of technology to change the game for students, and to really push TVCC into a digital landscape. And that really jumped us off the edge into this journey that over the last 4 or 5 years has transformed into some really incredible metrics for our TVCC team. The first thing that we did with Element was try to get a new application because we were processing paper. We wanted to move away from paper, make it seamless for students. So that started with getting an implementation and some workflows and automation in place using Element and Colleague to really reduce application time. Previously, before Element 451 and all of the automation and tools that we were able to put into place, it was taking us about 20 minutes per application to process and start to finish transcripts, put the documents, scan them into our imaging system, make sure that everything was populated, their residency, just all of the little intricate things that go into making sure that a student's record is complete. We were able to reduce that processing time by over 90% to where on average now it takes us about 3 minutes a student from start to finish to get a complete student record into our SIS. And that has completely freed up and changed the way that my team approaches their work, because no longer are they bogged down with manually entering first name, last name, date of birth, all of that data that we have to have in order to have a student record. It frees them up to, push a couple buttons, make sure that some T's are crossed and some I's are dotted, and then they can spend the rest of their time helping students and supporting them. And when we get phone calls during that busy rush over the summer, and we're trying to get thousands and thousands of students enrolled and into classes, if my staff don't have time to help them, they're never going to be able to process the application. Students are never going to be able to cross that finish line and meet with an advisor and figure out their next steps in their degree plans. So that first step, knocking down that application and that manual processing time, completely changed the game for my staff. The next step was to really start implementing some AI powered solutions through Element. TVCC was lucky enough to be one of our Element's first adopters of what at the time was called Bolt AI. And that looked like chatbots and some other AI solutions to help bridge that gap in that communication with students, because we were now sending out emails, we were now sending out text messages. We had the time to communicate, but there is still the same questions you get time and time again. Students want that information quickly. I am a Gen Z. I grew up as a tech native, a digital native. I understand what these students want out of us. They want quick service. They want answers fast. Their attention spans are incredibly short. And being one of the first adopters of AI to help bridge that gap, to meet students there and to help give them answers quickly that my team can't manually keep up with, changed the game for us. We're going to get more into some logistics about Bolt agents and how you can use AI through Element 451 in order to bridge some of those gaps. But weekly communications, just by getting our chatbot using AI installed, getting our knowledge base set up to make sure that that AI agent was really answering students effectively, reduced our communications by 37% in our office. Another 37 number is that the agent alone answers 37 hours of communications, and that's not including conversations that the AI can't answer, and we end up talking to that student either in person or over the phone or through text messaging or live support. That's just closed conversations that the agent was able to handle by itself. Students got the answers that they wanted, and my staff work 37 and a half hours a week. So that is another full-time person in my office helping my staff keep up with the day-to-day, the repeat questions. What's the status on my application? How do I take the TSI? How do I turn in a shot record? Where do I get an official transcript? All of those questions that students have constantly, my staff don't have to worry about. And that gives them more time on their plate to really troubleshoot, to be proactive, reach out to students that maybe are sitting out there that haven't turned in any documents, that they need to get admitted, or we see they're admitted but they haven't met with their advisor, and trying to really refocus and give my staff the breathing room to do what they do best, which is to be a human. Over the last 2 years, since really full blown all in implementing Element, we have seen an overall 18% enrollment growth, which is absolutely insane considering where we were in 2021, 2022. Our numbers were still down from COVID. And we are proud to say now that this semester, right now, we are still registering for the next couple of days going into our second 8 week term coming up for fall two. We are, for the first time in TVCC's recent history, above our numbers in 2019. So it is because of these tools and leveraging AI to allow my small team in this rural community college to do what they do best, to be human, to help others, to care, give them the time back in their day, that we have seen an overall graduation rate increase of 75%. And I really accredit that to our ability to break graduation records and completely smash them out of the park semester after semester, graduation after graduation, is because we leverage our tools and our abilities through our partnership with Element 451 in such a way that we are able to do our jobs really, really, really well. And there's so much that goes into that with hiring the right people and making sure that you have a solid foundation and a clear mission and vision. But we really wouldn't be where we are, and we wouldn't be as successful as we're able to be without leveraging AI in the midst of all of this to make us successful.
Courtney, this is fantastic. I just want to say, I hope that it's coming across to everybody who's listening how important that empathy and that human first piece is, because I think a lot of folks get nervous about incorporating AI and losing that piece. So I want to talk a little bit about your Reggie bot, I think is what we call him, Reggie, or they or it. We always personify our agents. And I took a screenshot just like this is the student experience that, somebody who's coming on to your website or is going to apply can open up and start a conversation with Reggie. But I just want to how long did it take to set Reggie up? Like, where does Reggie live? What languages does Reggie speak? What hours does Reggie work? Talk a little bit about, the framing of this agent or this bot and what that meant for your team.
Yeah. So Reggie is our chatbot. He is named after our mascot, which, if you know anything about TVCC or have ever seen us on social media, which some of you might be sitting here in this webinar and say, TVCC, Trinity Valley, that name sounds familiar. Where do I know TVCC from? Why do I keep seeing cheerleaders on all of the slides? We are from the Emmy Award-winning Netflix docuseries Cheer. If you haven't seen it, it's still up on Netflix. I would definitely recommend going and watching, because it really gives you a glimpse into how passionate we are as an institution across all facets. It's not just me. We are all very, very dedicated to TVCC, what this place means to us, and how special it is. But Reggie is a part of that. He is our mascot. He is a community liaison. I think a lot of people think of the mascot as being a part of a cheer team or a spirit program, and he goes to football games. Reggie for us is actually a piece of our enrollment and marketing department, and he is a ambassador for TVCC. He goes into classrooms and he reads to little kids, and he is just a piece of who we are. And so for students, we have a marketing series called Reggie Reminders. And so it's continuity of the brand across their experiences. So it just made sense for the first person who pops up when they get onto a TVCC site to have Reggie there to help them out and to kind of guide them through this onboarding experience. So how quickly did Reggie come to be? Well, I went to Element's Engage Summit, which happens every year. If you are an Element partner or you are considering Element, you're interested in AI, how you can use AI products to further your mission as a college, highly recommend. Engage Summit is fantastic year after year. But I saw a demo of this new feature that was coming out, and Element asked for some partners and some people to maybe pilot or demo the product. And I said, sign me up right now. I want it tomorrow. And that's essentially what I did. I went back to my team at TVCC and said, this absolutely incredible tool that's coming out. Can we please, look at this? I got the green light, and less than 5 days later, I had a full chatbot who knew everything from financial aid to dorms to programs to test scores and admissions requirements, anything that you could think of. I had one staff member, full-time staff member, who, amongst all of his other responsibilities, answering phones, people walking into the office, helping students out, whatever it might be, he was able to spend 5 working days helping us get this, not what we call a knowledge base, up and running that powers Reggie. So Reggie only knows what you teach Reggie. Reggie is not this AI monster who's out there just gathering mass amounts of knowledge from all depths of the internet. He knows what we teach him, and he knows it very well. And so when students get on, they have a couple of just right off the bat, they can click some prefabricated questions, but they can also just ask whatever they need to ask. And Reggie will do his best to answer their questions. We do tell people that Reggie is AI because being human is so important to us, and we don't want students or community members or parents to be under the impression that this chatbot that they're talking to is a person, and then have them be frustrated because Reggie can't give them all the answers because the knowledge is only so infinite. And so it's important for us to make sure that that's clear and transparent. We don't want to mislead people, but they can ask whatever they want, and Reggie will do his best to answer. If he doesn't know the answer, he will hand it off to a live member who is monitoring the chat behind the scenes. But Reggie is also incredibly intelligent, and students can ask in nearly any language any of their questions, and Reggie automatically translates and responds either in writing or in voice to that student. Being in Texas, we have a lot of native Spanish speakers. We also at TVCC have a very, very large and very diverse international student population because we have such a robust and internationally acclaimed athletic program. Most of our athletes actually do come from other countries, and they are not always native English speakers. And so they do need additional support. And I cannot have people in my office who speak Japanese, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Lebanese, Arabic, all of these languages, which are very common for our students to speak. I am lucky that I do have someone in my office who speaks Spanish, but I cannot support those students who come from other countries. And so having Reggie where he can respond in any language, it translates it for me on the back end so I can still see what is going on. And maybe if I'm noticing the student is asking questions in Japanese and isn't getting their answers, I can feed Reggie some additional pieces of knowledge that he can then translate right back to that student. So it's really incredible to have this person, this entity, as another full-time staff member who can do pretty much anything we want him to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So for the team out there to know, the listeners, our agents know up to 100 languages and we're improving every day. So I do think the ones that you listed, Reggie should have the ability to speak natively back. Reggie is on 24/7. Do you ever
Yeah.
turn Reggie off? Yes. So we pulled some stats so that y'all could take a look at. This is just in the last month. So this is from September 14th to October 13th, the most recent month with Reggie and what Reggie has been able to do here. So you can see 101 minutes worked in what, like, 3, 4 weeks. 813 responses that translates to over 6,000 minutes, which is roughly 106 hours of staff time in 1 month. So Courtney's saying like that really does fill like a full-time position. It 100% fills a full-time position. For those after hours, nearly 180 of those conversations were outside of business hours. So Courtney can go to her dance, practice and her competition and go to the football game and homecoming and know that somebody is taking care of these students and answering those questions while y'all have lives and are connecting with students.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that knowledge gap, feeding Reggie knowledge that he doesn't need. So the system tracks when those knowledge gaps are so that you can go in and say, Reggie didn't know the answer to this. So many people are asking about this. What else do we need to tell Reggie so that he can answer those questions? And then tracking those human handoffs too. So, what was impressive to me about this last month is that only 15 conversations required that human handoff, which is a 35% drop from the previous month, which means that your humans don't need to be as involved as they, maybe thought they would need to be, but that Reggie's doing a really good job answering those questions. And
And
this is, go
this
ahead.
this is in comparison to probably the busiest period of time in our whole year. So it's
I was gonna say, like, how does September and October like look, for
yeah,
recruitment, what that looks like? Yeah.
yeah, September is really when we hit the ground running with recruiting for our next admission cycle. But this is in comparison to, students who are calling or texting or messaging asking about their application status, trying to get in for the fall. So to for those of you out there looking and seeing, oh, all these decreases, just that's in comparison to our absolute busiest month of the year. So it is really phenomenal to have that as a piece of our team.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that because then I zoomed out and pulled out a whole year. And it's like, okay, so we can see what the last month looks like, but let's take a look at what the whole year looks like. So overall, those Bolt agents worked 1,300 minutes to deliver 14,000 responses. So that's a massive efficiency for less than a day's worth of AI labor, saving more than 114,000 or roughly 19,000 staff hours. So that actually is nearly a full-time position worth of work in a year. That conversation growth, so 9,300 conversations, which is up 30% year over year. So that's saying that it's taking on more of those conversations year over year, which is super exciting. After hours, again, 129% increase in after hour conversations. So, I mean, this tells you like your students they have lives, they're working professionals, or, they're coming on like after dinner, after they get off work, before in the morning, late at night, trying to get answers to those questions. You've been able to resolve those knowledge gaps. So I think this actually maybe tells us there's an increased question variety. Types of questions that students are asking is varying, and they're asking questions across the board. And then your human handoffs are down 51%, which is just fantastic. It doesn't mean that Reggie has been busy. It means he's actually like really effective at what he does. Um, I think it's also, as this kind of points out, as the knowledge improves and as you invest time in these AI tools, the experience improves for that student and those students. I did pull a sample conversation. I did edit out like, names and everything, but I did want to share an example of like what proactive engagement looks like, on an AI end, knowing that that human piece is so important to Courtney and her TVCC team. I just want to show how human this can be. So this student came in, said she made a mistake. She's supposed to start in fall 2026, not fall 2025. Reggie came in, stepped in immediately, said, I recognize it's a mistake. Let's clarify what your mistake is. We're going to guide you to that next step. Once the student told, Reggie what was going on, Reggie responded and linked to the advisement center, which I think, yes, yeah, the advisement center okay, did the details, the phone number, making sure that the student felt reassured. So you can also see the second layer of this where the human steps in, where one of Courtney's team members came in and said, don't worry about it. Your application, regardless of that date, is going to be good to go. We also scored the experience. So you'll see over here, the experience score was a 4, meaning that that student received clear, relevant information, that you're benchmarking now what that engagement looks like, and really thinking about, this is a great sort of textbook interaction between AI and the student. The bot identified the intent. It delivered that value. It passed the baton on to the human. It's not really replacing students. Or replacing your people. It's making that human moment even more powerful and getting them more support for that. Now, I know that you all are thinking about what it takes to get to the next step and that you're looking at some advising and retention and using AI in this particular way too. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to you, Courtney, and ask maybe for an update on have you put some of these automatic advisors like assignments in place? Are you doing these automated check-ins? What does that look like at
Yeah.
TVCC?
So at the beginning of my story and where we started with TVCC during COVID, it was all about enrollment, wanting to increase those numbers, get students into classes. And over the last couple of legislative cycles in the state of Texas, our government has changed our formula funding model for community colleges to be retention based. So in my role as director of enrollment services, I have really had to take a step back and reevaluate, okay, melt rate matters, enrollment numbers matter, but now retention is the focus because not only is this now how we're funded, but this is the core of what we do, right? And it reinforces that student first mindset. We want them to be successful. If they get into our classes, that's fantastic. However, that's not just it. They actually have to be successful. So, how do you apply some of these tools and these resources into what we do in our academic advising office? So, keeping with the advisor, with the student first mindset, we know early intervention is never early enough in the retention landscape. So, we have decided to deploy kind of an experimental model here at TVCC where we are embedding academic advising in the enrollment funnel. So, now when a student applies to TVCC through Element, we use automation and some AI features to automatically assign their academic advisor to them based off of a couple different caseload criterias. We then from there send out some emails and communications which appear like they're coming from the academic advisor. But again, my team of advisors does not have the time in their day to individually send an introduction email or a check-in to all of the students in their caseload, especially when they're working with hundreds of students every semester. But we're also able to do automated check-ins where we can have Element send a quick message that says that comes from me to my specific group of students that say, "Hey guys, it's we're approaching midterm. Are you doing okay? What are your grades looking like?" Or you can even do it based off of grades in Element using a feature called Student Hub, and you say, "Hi, I see that you're kind of struggling in your anatomy class. Do you know we have tutoring resources available? Here's where you reach out. Here's how to schedule a tutoring appointment. Hi, my name is Courtney. I'm your academic advisor. I see that you haven't logged into class in 3 or 4 days. You should, is there something else going on that we should be aware of?" So it's making my staff be proactive when they don't even actually have to be proactive about it. And it's opening the doors to this personalized this advising model that the the academic advisor gets to be there front row and center for the student from the time that they apply, guide them through that entire admissions process. You have questions about your college transcript. Is this class going to transfer in? Do I need to turn in test scores for this specific program? Their advisor is now there from start. No more are the days where students wait until the last 2 weeks of August to turn in a college application and the scramble to get the college transcripts and this, that, and the other. Our advisors see them from the beginning. Our students have someone from the moment they submit their application that is their cheerleader, their support person, their guiding light from start to graduation. And all of that is powered by AI, backed by automation, and put into place with a small team without any heavy tech lifts that require you to have a whole person sitting there programming behind the scenes all day, every day. And that is really allowing us to step into this new frontier of retention and enrollment in a real
Yeah.
community college.
I love this example and I love because I want to be mindful of time, but people ask so often, like, how do I get started? And it's overwhelming. And you've come such a long way, but you started with one, right? Like one use case, like with the application or, one agent. So we did put together a framework here that hopefully everybody can use. Identify that specific challenge or that pain point. If it's melt, if it's FAFSA, if it's, I love the reducing application processing time, right? Because that benefits both your staff and the student. So just start with one problem, map that problem, document it. Hopefully, you don't have turnover like Courtney did with her leadership during the documentation and mapping process. Um, Figuring out what that one repetitive task is. Maybe it's having your AI agents answer those FAQs that Courtney mentioned, but what's a high volume task that you can use AI to streamline it? How do you measure it? Those built-in metrics, like Courtney can now go to her leadership and say, this is a full-time person. This is how many conversations we've answered. This is how many hours they're working after hours. What can we do with the money we're saving, the resources we're saving? How can we reallocate our resources or talk about what our team dynamics look like and be able to serve students better? And then continuing to share, expand, and iterate. It's so important, I think, for folks to realize this isn't set it and forget it. And what you've been doing, Courtney, in growing that journey is really important to, it never ends. Like there's always something new, there's always something else you can do, there's always something that you can report on. And while it may feel overwhelming, you can do this in small chunks. I will also just share, we've got a couple of key takeaways here, basically reiterating what I said. Start small, scale fast. When you see the early wins, don't sit on them. Take advantage of them. Take what's working and expand it across your internal workflows, your departments. Remember to keep things human first. I think that Courtney did a really great job making sure that that stayed part of the value and part of the mission and part of the value that her team is delivering. Don't think about replacing the staff. Think about helping your staff in ways that you can make them grow, and find ways to keep this, sustainable. But really, just start. I always like to end on a slide like this because your student engagement depends on this, right? Your enrollment depends on this. The institutions that are acting now are getting ahead. I mean, it's rare to see an 18% enrollment growth over 2 years. That is unheard of. The fact that you all are back to your pre-COVID days, not a lot of colleges can say that right now. And so I don't want any of these other institutions and these partners to really fall behind. So don't think about if you'll start, but really think about where and when you will start. And Courtney, before we turn it over to questions, anything you would like to add? Anything that we
Um,
didn't hit?
I tried to hit it all. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure so many of us, like I said, this is small. We're small teams. We don't have all the answers. We don't have all the power. And it's so easy to just use AI as a crutch, or just think, oh, it's going to take my job. It's able to do all of these things. Really reframe how you're thinking about AI as how can I use it to help me do my job? How can I use it to make processes less cumbersome and allow me to do what I got into this in the first place? We all are here to help students and support them, and we can't do that when we're bogged down with the everyday, the repetitiveness. So, human first, AI backed.
Amazing. Tabitha, I'm going to turn it over to you because I don't think we've got access to the Q&A questions. So I think maybe you'll have the special permissions for that one.
Yeah. Hi again. I do not see any questions in the Q&A function, but we do have a minute if someone wants to close us out with a great question.
So I see
Oh, here you go.
Jennifer said, would you be willing to share your staffing model and how they support students through their journey, prospect, applicant orientation, slash advising, enrolled, graduation? What positions support the students? Absolutely, Jennifer. Thank you for asking. So I have a team of probably eight, I think, I think eight academic advisors across 5 campuses, and I have 2 recruiters. So what that looks like logistically behind the scenes, I would be happy to share. My email, I think, was listed at the beginning. It's my name, Courtney.skiles at tvcc.edu. But essentially, we have academic advisors assigned caseloads. And from the moment that student applies, the student is notified of who their advisor is via communications. And from there, the advisors are responsible for making sure that our students are moving through that enrollment process, that they're turning in their documents, really allowing the academic advisor to not just be in charge of the registration piece, but have them actually be a part of the enrollment piece. And so giving our advisors the access over the student's checklist, hey, I see that you haven't turned this in. Do you need help? Do you know where to get this document from? Here's where you turn it into. And then they follow them all the way through graduation. With graduation, we do have a graduation coordinator who is a part of what you would commonly call a registrar's office, but that person is more of like a graduation consultant. So if our advisors have specific questions about programs or if classes are going to transfer, course substitutions, that graduation coordinator is an active role in supporting our academic advising team. And then our recruiters obviously do the traditional recruiting outreach, going out into the community, being active in schools or community events, and different partnerships that we have. But they also are there to be liaisons between when a student might just have general questions, maybe say they haven't applied, they don't have an assigned advisor yet, maybe they're coming back and they're unfamiliar with this new model. Our recruiters are there to be enrollment kind of liaisons and guides, and help make sure that students are navigating that process and that they're getting to the right people at the right time. Of course.
And it looks like we have one last question, which is, what was the initial expense to get this started, and have you been able to grow your department in spite of AI?
Right. So yes, we have been able to grow our department in spite of AI. We have grown our department because there were other outside factors that had nothing to do with Element, nothing to do with AI, that we needed additional support in roles. Most recently, we added another academic advisor position to one of our campuses because we knew that our students there needed another person to support them. So even with AI being another full-time staff, that new role was in addition to that. And then about cost, I don't want to speak specifically to cost because my contract is unique to TVCC, and we signed 5 years ago, and the product and the platform has just changed. But I'm sure Daniela would love for you to reach out to her, and she can talk costs and some of the different products and packages that they offer. I know
Yeah.
my specific contract with Element has changed and is going to change a lot when we re-up here in a little bit. So I don't
What
want to share
wonderful. What a
inaccurate
wonderful
information.
answer. Yes, Ryan, I would say so. Our pricing is on our website, but I would also encourage you to start with some free tools. ChatGPT is a great free tool if you want to take and automate something, even just asking it for a process or asking it to maybe rewrite some of your campaigns, or even taking a stab at building FAQs for like knowledge base. So there are a ton of free tools. Google Gemini is another free tool. Claude is another free tool. So if you're just dipping your toes into AI, you can start without an expense. And that may be a great place to just get some quick wins and say, hey, we've been able to streamline this, this, and this. Now it's time to invest in a tool that can help us work. But thank you, Courtney. That was a great, that was a great politically correct answer. Yeah.
All right. Um, okay. I think those were our questions, and we are about at time. So this has been really informative. I'm really grateful to you, Courtney and Daniela, for this great session, and we will get it out to attendees along with your contact information again.
Awesome. Thank you for having us, Tabitha. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And shout out to the Element partners in the chat, too, who are also singing our praises. Thank you all. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for your time. It was great to be here.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.